World building is one of the most misunderstood parts of writing. Most writers think it's about inventing maps, magic systems, or elaborate histories, but the truth is that great world building starts somewhere completely different. Today's episode is a special preview of an upcoming interview from WorldShift 2026, my free online speculative fiction writers conference that's happening this August. In this excerpt, I am joined by Gabriela Pereira to explore the psychology of world building and why your protagonist, not your setting, is where you should actually begin your world building. If by the end of this conversation you're craving more, and I have a feeling you will be sure to join the WorldShift waitlist. WorldShift is going to be an absolute blast, and I would really love to see you there for all the presentations, the nightly writing sprints, the critique partner speed dating, the publishing expert Q&A panel, and so much more. Plus, podcast listeners who join the waitlist will receive exclusive bonuses you won't be able to get anywhere else. So you can either go join the waitlist by heading down to the show notes and finding the link there, or you can just go to resources.manyworldswriting.com/worldshift. Hello and welcome to the Speculative Fiction Writing Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Heather Davis. I'm a book coach, developmental editor, founder of the WorldShift Writing Conference, and fellow storyteller. And this is the show that's all about how to brainstorm, write, edit, publish, and sell a powerful speculative fiction novel. And maybe just change the world too. Today, I'm having a conversation with Gabriela Pereira about the psychology of world building. Gabriela is an author, speaker, entrepreneur who wants to challenge the status quo of higher education. As the founder and instigator of DIY MFA, her mission is to empower writers, artists, and other creatives to take an entrepreneurial approach to their education and professional growth. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
I am so excited to be here. This is going to be such a fun conversation.
I think so too, because we are getting ready to talk about something that I think a lot of writers need to hear, and it's an angle that they're not used to hearing it talked about. So the psychology of world building, right? They're used to hearing about world building, but not the psychology of it. So I'm super excited to dive into this. All right, so let's get started from the very beginning, just in case there are writers out there who are kind of new to writing and don't know all of the lingo and all of this stuff. So what is world building exactly?
So world building is a fancy way of saying that you're putting together the world of your story. So that can mean any number of things. It can mean the immediate surroundings that the characters are encountering. It can mean like the structure of your world, like, the districts of Panem or whatever. It can mean like how your world changes over time. It can mean all of those things. Like basically it's the ecosystem that your story exists within.
I love that so much. So, I mean, obviously this is WorldShift and it's specifically for speculative fiction writers, but we also get a lot of writers who are just here for the craft advice and they don't necessarily write speculative. So I have to ask the question, is world building only for speculative fiction writers like fantasy and horror and science fiction?
Absolutely not. World building is for everybody. And even if you think my world is totally normal, totally ordinary, regular place, you're still building a world. So I would say that there are certain genres, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, historical, where the world is very prominent and very obvious because it's different from our world. But there are other places in our own worlds that you need to build. Like, for example, let's suppose you are writing a book like The Devil Wears Prada, and you are building it within this ecosystem that is the magazine and all the politics and all the, fashion and all of that stuff. That's world building. You're creating the universe and the ecosystem that the story lives within. So even if you're writing a story that's set in a regular town, in a regular place, I can guarantee you there are people who don't know what that regular town is. I'm from a big city. I don't know what a regular suburban town looks like or feels like in the same way. So it's, you have to build that world because you don't know where your readers are coming from and what experiences they have and how familiar they're going to be with the world you create.
Yeah, I really love that idea of no matter what you're writing, you are world building because one of the reasons, personally, when I'm reading a novel, one of the things I love to do is read about something I don't know about, or at the same time, write about something I don't know about. I know, as a writer, I love to dig into topics that I am not as familiar with. So I have to understand them myself and then work to help readers understand those same things. Like, what does it mean to be a bare knuckle boxer? I don't know, but right, you would have to build that world. Or what does it mean to be a dragon rider? I don't know, but that would be a fun world to build.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we dive into your framework, in your experience, what are the most common things that writers just get wrong about world building, like misconceptions that they have or anything like that that kind of derails their world building?
So the first one that comes to mind is the info dump, right? Like it's very tempting when you're building a world to build all of it at once and be like to your reader, This is my entire world." And then you put the characters in it and you create a story. But readers are going to be bored if you do it that way. It's a lot more engaging if you have a character and you drop that character into the ecosystem, and then the reader kind of explores that ecosystem alongside that character as the story evolves. So avoiding that big info dump where you have like the long, complex descriptions of all the different districts and the different cities and the different mountains and all of the things. Instead, think about like, where is your character and how can you seep that world in as your character is going on their journey?
I think that's such important advice, the idea of coming at it from what where my protagonist is instead of here is everything I ever learned about my world and you have to sit there and listen to it, which is right. As a speculative fiction writer myself, it is the thing that you want to do. You're like, they can't possibly understand it unless I give them this 12-page dissertation on, everything I know. But yeah, so coming at it from an entirely different angle there.
Absolutely. Another thing that I notice writers often do is they jump to, and we'll get into the framework in a minute, but they jump to the later layers
Mhm.
before they've covered the earlier layers. So they're dealing with things like, the different districts of their world or whatever, like the sort of structural aspect of their world. And they haven't really figured out, like, what does your world smell like? What does your world
Mhm.
sound like? What are all of those sort of more basic parts of your world before you get into like the big, bells and whistles?
I love that so much. So you have a 6 layer framework and you developed well, I'll let you explain. How did you develop it? What is it inspired by? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so a little known fact about me, before I went into writing, I was a psychology nerd. I went to graduate school for psychology, and yeah, I was all about like the research and all of that, particularly around developmental psychology. And
Mm.
so while I was studying, I had the opportunity to interact with a professor, Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and he developed a framework back, I think it was like the 1970s or 1980s. And it was this revolutionary idea around child development. And it was this concept that, because if you think about it in like the 70s, 80s, and before, people often thought about like the whole nature nurture debate. Like, is the kid
Mhm.
born this way or is it their environment that makes them that way? And he came up with this idea that it's an ecological system with the child at the center. And then there are all these ripples of influence that sort of ripple out from the child that impact how the child grows up. And it's not just the individual ripples, but the interactions between the ripples that creates the whole ecosystem that affects a child. And each child's ecosystem is going to be unique because they're a unique child and they're in a unique environment and they have different families and different schools and different towns and all of that. So it was this very, mind-blowing new way of looking at how the whole ecosystem of child development operated. And so I remember, I learned about this back in grad school. It was part of the curriculum. And then when I was thinking about world building, like 10 years later, I started thinking like, wait a minute, but are characters kind of like the child at the center? And if the character is the child, then what are the ripples? Like, how do those
Mm.
ripples match up? And I started to realize that the same way that we approach like the child ecosystem, we can approach the character and the world ecosystem that your character is at the center of. And so that's what the whole framework for the psychology of world building is based off of.
I love that idea because, as you said earlier, so many writers will try and build this world and simply drop a protagonist in there. And very often that can lead to like very generic, neutral descriptions, understandings, and all of that without this understanding that we have it is the character at the center of it. And it's them interacting with the world sort of from the center out, which is just phenomenal. I love that idea. So, could you walk us through the skeleton of your model and then we'll dive deeper into each layer?
Yeah, so we've got 6 layers, just like the Bronfenbrenner model also has 6 layers. So at the center, you've got the main character, your protagonist. Then immediately surrounding them, you've got their supporting cast. That would be, any supporting characters, everything from like walk-on characters to like the BFF or the love interest or the antagonist who's like super important.
Hmm.
Then, when you go out one more layer, you've got the relationships between the supporting characters because the supporting characters individually relate to the main character, but they also relate to each other.
Mm.
And their relationships can impact the main character in unexpected ways. So you've got the relationships, that's layer number 3. Then we shift gears from looking at character related things to looking at more surroundings and world related things. So the next layer, layer 4, is the immediate surroundings. Like what is around the character? Are they in a room? Are they in a forest? What does it smell like? What are the sensory inputs? All of those things. From there, we then go to layer 5, which is the systems and structures of the world. So the districts, the houses of the school, the different, factions of the whatever society or what have you. And also the structure of the world. So things like the culture, and culture involves a lot of things like politics, economics, you know, yeah, like music and cultural type
Mm.
things, food, all of those things are part of the systems and structure layer. And then we get the plot and story related layer. And what that means is that's layer 6. That's the world as it changes over time. So,
Mm.
like your world, the way you build it, let's say you're writing a trilogy, the way you build your world in book 1 is not the same world that we're going to be dealing with in book 3. The world is going to evolve and change. We hope, because the character's going to be
Right.
doing stuff that's probably going to evolve and change the world. So, you think about, for example, in the Hunger Games trilogy, the Panem, the Hunger Games world, is very different in book 1 than it is in book 3 when they're in the middle of the revolution and there's all sorts of things and there's District 13 and all of those, shenanigans. So the world itself is a dynamic system that changes and has like ebb and flow over time, in addition to the dynamic system that is like surrounding the character.
Oh, I love that. I love that we're building, from like most proximal parts to the protagonist out to things that are more overarching and things that, the character is a little bit more distant from. So I love that approach. It's so fun. So let's go ahead and dive more specifically into layer 1, which is just about the protagonist. Can you tell us more about that?
So when we're talking about protagonists and character development, we're going to
Mhm.
be thinking about things like their motivations and who they are as a person and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
But when we're thinking about it in the context of world building, what we're really paying attention to is how the character operates as a filter for that world. So think about it like this. Imagine you have a character and they are afraid for their life. The way they see, like they walk into their apartment and they're, being chased and they're terrified, the way they see their apartment is going to be different than if they were, say, having a happy day with rose-colored glasses and everything's fine. It's going to be a totally different perspective. Same environment, different perspective because the character's state of mind is different. So when we're talking about like the character stuff in the world building model, we're not talking about character development per se, but we're
Mhm.
talking about the characters as a filter to create that sense of the world.
I love that. The idea that, and correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate if I'm not going quite far enough, but the idea that, and so many writers will come into a scene and they just want to describe everything in the scene in the same way. So it becomes this neutral thing. But what you're saying is, writers are going to pick and choose the details and the things that would be noticed or experienced by the protagonist based on where they are emotionally in that
Exactly.
moment.
Exactly. And that also ties to the point of view, right? Because if
Very
you're
much.
in a first person point of view, you're going to have access to more sensory perception than, say, even if you're in a limited third person point of view, but like, a close third person point of view, it's still a little bit more distant than a first person point of view. So that aspect also plays into it. Like, what's the lens that you're seeing the world through with that character as the filter?
Yeah, I really love that you said it is different even between close third and first. And I've noticed that I'm currently writing something where one protagonist, my main protagonist is first person and my second protagonist is third person. And wow, the difference, right? In the things that you naturally bring to the page, that filter that your character is using. Yeah, that in and of itself, I think would be kind of a fun thing for writers to just play with the difference of how that filter works between. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would suggest for writers, if you want to practice this skill,
Mhm.
think of an environment that's the same place, like you're going to use the same exact space, but now the character's walking into that space with a different state of mind. So they might be going into that space afraid for their life. They might be going into it after having met the person that they fell in love with at first sight. They might be walking into it after experiencing a deep and devastating loss. And
Mm.
so they're experiencing grief. They might just be going into it like normal, like it's a boring old day. But whatever their state of mind is, it's going to change how they just like how you, the writer, describe it, seeing it through their eyes.
I love that so much. And I imagine some of the things that would automatically change would be just, I often talk to the writers I work with about word choice for emotional residue, like what, sentence length, word choice, things that would naturally be very different depending
Mm,
on the emotional state of the protagonist. Could be quite fun. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, my friends, that's it for now. But wait, don't leave yet. Remember, this conference is free and it's going to be so much fun and you will learn so much. We have over 30 plus presentations from publishing experts. We have nightly writing sprints, critique partner speed dating, a publishing expert Q&A panel, and so much more. So go get on the waitlist right now. Until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, the world needs your stories right now. So don't you dare give up on your novel or yourself. Talk soon.